Have you ever wondered about this whole world of mushrooms? People taking mushrooms for health benefits like a stronger immune system, a sharper brain, let alone this whole world of the psychedelic mushrooms and people using these for healing journeys or even for recreational experiences. Well, if that's the case, you're going to love today's episode because we are bringing on guest expert Robert Johnson, who is the founder and CEO of Microdosing, a man who has dedicated his life to spreading very high quality mushroom supplements and a lot of great education. And in today's episode, we get into the world of functional mushrooms, why you might consider taking things like lion's mane, chaga, reishi, turkey tail, and the benefits that they do have. And we also talk about psychedelic mushrooms, some of Robert's experiences, as well as the legal landscape of these things and where he thinks things are going. And I will say this, Microboost has some of the best mushroom products, like super high quality. And that's what really sets Robert apart in this space is that, as he talks about in the end of this episode, there's a lot of fillers and crap that people throw in these products, and they have a commitment to excellence when it comes to their Microboost products. And he's been kind enough to give our listeners a discount on his website. So you can go to Microboost, MYCROBoost.com. That's MYCROBoost.com. And you can use the promo code FITFAMILY to get 15% off at trying any of these supplements. And I'll say this, like I have used functional mushrooms like lion's mane and cordyceps for a while because they give me an edge and a lot of mental clarity and the cognitive benefits. So if you're looking to foray into this world and experience of trying mushrooms, that would really be a really great benefit. And of course, I think you're going to find the conversation on the psychedelic aspect of this very fascinating as well. So get into today's episode. I think you're going to enjoy this with Robert Johnson of Microboost. I'll see you there. Today, we're joined by our guest expert, Robert Johnson, who is the founder and CEO of Microboost, a company that specializes in making very high quality functional mushroom supplements. So you've probably heard some of the buzz and maybe even seen it in your local grocery stores or health food stores. There are many companies right now that are pushing mushroom-based products like lion's mane, chaga, reishi. And it turns out for good reason because many of these products have phenomenal health benefits dating back thousands of years. And now we're really tapping into this as a big venture. And this is where Robert enters the scene. He has a wide breadth of experience in all sorts of different plant medicines, certainly functional mushrooms, but also through his experience in the cannabis industry. And he basically is the guy that knows a lot about these medicines, how they interact with our health, how they help our mindsets when used properly. And today we're going to get into a deep discussion on functional mushrooms. We're also going to touch on psychedelic mushrooms. We're going to talk about what to look for in great supplements and, of course, some of Robert's own journey. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks a lot for that intro. Excited to be here, talk with you about mushrooms and everything else.
Cool. So let's just get straight into it. I think this term functional mushroom seems a little bit like a buzzword, but what does it exactly mean? And like, what does it mean to be a functional mushroom? What are some examples? And let's just kind of like unpack it at a high level.
Yeah, it's great to start with the definition and the vocabulary. So there's a couple of different things that functional mushrooms are called. So first off, you have your edible mushrooms that you buy in the grocery store, the portobellos, the criminis, the pizza toppings. And then you have the psychedelic mushrooms, as you mentioned. And then what functional mushrooms are also known as medicinal mushrooms or adaptogenic mushrooms. Some of them taste good, like lion's mane, can be used as an edible mushroom, but mostly they're consumed for their medical benefits and have been for thousands of years. Chinese medicine incorporates a ton of mushrooms still to this day. And I think, with where we are in our world right now, people are looking for more and more natural alternatives for medicine. That's where mushrooms comes in.
For sure. And what are some of the main functional mushrooms that you think are like the heavy hitters or the main ones that people might see or look for the categories of benefits that people might want?
Yeah, definitely when I start to have a conversation with someone about functional mushrooms, if they've heard of any of them, usually the most popular one is lion's mane. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it has a really cool name. And it actually looks kind of like a lion's mane or a cheerleader's pom-pom. It's a unique looking fungus. But the benefits are really what has got so much attention in the supplement world. It prevents neurodegenerative diseases in the brain, specifically Alzheimer's and dementia. And the reason for that is because of its cognitive enhancing properties. So,
Mm-hmm.
baby boomers as well as Gen Xers, millennials are all looking for, to be on their game, to be sharp, focused. And so I think that, across generations, people are looking for just different ways to improve their attention span and their focus and their drive, without caffeine that can have, negative
Mm-hmm.
side effects, or pharmaceuticals, Adderall, etc. So I see a lot of people replacing those sort of things or supplementing those substances, particularly with functional mushrooms like lion's mane. They do a couple of things, like some more vocab for your
Mm-hmm.
listeners. One is called neurogenesis, which is like the
Mm-hmm.
formation of new brain cells, and then also neuroplasticity, which is making new neural connections in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really good for any sort of cognitive function. And so I think that a lot of people have had family members that have suffered from these neurodegenerative diseases. It's always a sad way to watch a loved one go, and we want to prevent that for ourselves and for more of our loved ones.
For sure. And I think there's a couple things that are really poetic about the mushroom and how they help with the brain connectivity, because like literally the mushroom is this organism, this whole kingdom of beings that is not plants and not animals, and it forms this network and it branches out and makes connections in its own right. And it just seems poetic to me that it also helps our literal neurons, at least lion's mane itself, make these powerful connections. I think that's very beautiful. So lion's mane is one for cognitive health, and I can maybe speak to my own experience having used it quite a bit. It's not something that gives you like the stimulant buzzing feel like you take coffee and you feel it. It's more of like a building over time of helping you be clear and sharp. Like you might find a little bit of a lift, but it's not a stimulant. It's more just like helping you function better, right?
That's a great qualifier for sure. It's not like take a pill and 30-minute immediate reaction, but it is building it up in your system, and working on your brain, working
Mm-hmm.
it's mushroom magic through there over time. So that's a great way. With any supplements, I think expectations are really important. And sometimes people market stuff. I know I was in CBD for years, and people would market it like you're going to jump out of your wheelchair and start doing, gymnastics down the hallway. And if it helps with your arthritis, and you're set up with the proper expectations, then maybe be happy about that rather than, trying to do a back handspring.
Okay. Other mushrooms, I'll do a couple that I like, and you can speak in any of these. I hear a lot about cordyceps. I hear a lot about reishi. I hear a lot about chaga, and I hear a lot about turkey tail. So, in any order, I'd love for you to kind of comment on some of these, and any. I'm sure I missed some really heavy hitters too, but please go through these. Maybe start with cordyceps.
Yeah, cordyceps. One of my favorite anecdotes from like the research that I've done with cordyceps is in the 90s. There was the Chinese women's track team competed in the Olympics, and they broke so many records and won so many medals that the Olympic judges, had them drug tested, and they passed all their drug tests, and their coach credited cordyceps mushrooms for their increase in time. And so cordyceps is a natural energy booster, and it's also great for your lungs. It's a respiratory enhancer. So I can see how a track runner would benefit from having more energy and more, I think it's called VO2 capacity
Yes.
in their lungs. So cordyceps had a little bit of time in the spotlight this year. There was like a fictional version of cordyceps that was the subject of the HBO series The Last of Us. And
Mm-hmm.
this cordyceps mushroom, like turned people into zombies. There's like over 400 different types of cordyceps, and cordyceps militaris, by the way, is what we use
Yes.
in lion's mane. But the interesting thing about that, mushrooms are endlessly fascinating to me, is that fictional strain that's in that show and the video game it was based on is actually comes from a strain of cordyceps that works similarly on ants. And so there's a particular type of cordyceps that like infects the brain of an ant and can work its way and kind of control the ant body like a remote control car, lead them back to the ant colony, and then fruit the mushroom actually out of the head of the ant, and can take over an ant colony. So that's just really cool. What, like you say, these really unique, not plants, not animals, have the abilities to do.
That is, it's like, that is, I hope people got that. Like literally the mushroom gets into an ant, infects its brain, tells it to go to the hive, sprouts out of its head, shoots off its spores, and like that's its legitimate life cycle. Like that is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it's stranger than fiction and made for a pretty entertaining show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely. I think it also kind of fueled something that is prevalent as a mycophobia. Some people are afraid to eat mushrooms or try mushrooms. So that's I like the attention that it gives to cordyceps, even a fictional version of it. But I'm hoping that it's not contributing to people's fear of mushrooms.
I've taken a lot of cordyceps. I don't have a sprout yet, and we know that those don't affect humans in the same way, which is good, I would say. Okay, so we also have talk to me about like reishi. I see this a lot in these products that people say like chill out or calm with reishi. Like, is there a calming effect of that? I mean, what's the benefit of that particular mushroom?
Yeah, we formulate reishi for like sleep aids. It is there are studies that show that it can decrease anxiety and yes, calm the nervous system. The Chinese call reishi the mushroom of immortality. It's actually a really beautiful uh, fungus as well. So yeah, the reishi mushroom, I think up there are so far we've gone through my top three,
Mm-hmm.
and that one is endlessly fascinating too. One of the things about making supplements like mushrooms, these alternative products, is that making health claims about them is really a fine line, and so and while there are tons of studies out there about the benefits of mushrooms, I really just encourage people to try them for themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
with the benefits that are published out there, and the ability for cognitive enhancement or more calm or better sleep. I think it's just a really affordable way to invest in something that if it can really help with those things for you, then you've really struck gold.
Nice. Totally agree. One final mushroom I want to ask and talk about before we go into the different aspects of this conversation is turkey tail. And what I think is interesting about that is that the mushroom that kind of penetrated the conventional medical scene due to its effects in cancer and helping with the immune system during cancer and people going through that. Can you speak into turkey tail, maybe some of that research or some of the takeaways from what we're seeing in a more cancer clinical perspective from that?
Yeah, yeah, I really got interested in turkey tail watching the Netflix documentary "Fantastic Fungi." That's a great one. Still on there now. Encourage anyone who hasn't seen that to check it out. But the main mycologist that documentary is centered on is Paul Stamets, and he's been working with mushrooms for decades, but he had a really personal experience where his mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Given less than a year to live, and he had been studying turkey tail and its anti-cancer properties for a long time, and he really put that to the test. Where conventional medicine, doctors had told him that couldn't save his mom. He gave her super high doses of turkey tail over the course of 9, 12 months, and she ended up living many, many years after that. And that's really what opened my eyes to it. And I started to find a lot of research that suggests that she's not a one-off or something unique. Even people in my family, when I started making functional mushroom products, I learned that one of my cousin's wives, has been taking turkey tail for years now, and it's like the only thing that helps with her particular ailments. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm always learning more, and even with the mind blowing stuff that I learned, like there was an article in the Guardian this past year about scientists showing that mushrooms have the ability to communicate right through the mycelium network, but some of the wave patterns that they were measuring, they identified as words, and so basically, like scientists, the headline was scientists have discovered that mushrooms can speak at least 50 different types of words. So uh, what they're doing inside of our brain, I think there's still fortunately going to be a lot more studies around it now that there's a lot of funding going into mushroom research and more interest. The more consumer demand, I think the more there's going to be proven test results and clinical trials and just a continued growth in interest, use, and our understanding of really what they're doing.
Nice. I think this is a perfect segue out of those kind of hero mushrooms into a little bit of mushroom history, and I want to kind of guide us into the psychedelic realm of the mushrooms as well, because I see, at least in the psychedelic side, this is an area where we have a lot of mental health issues in our current society, and these are now being used effectively in many cases to help people heal trauma, understand themselves better, and they create a pretty profound shift in your experience of consciousness when you take a psychedelic mushroom. Let's go to the historical perspective first. There's this idea that humans deep in the plains of Africa would discover these mushrooms on cow patties and stuff like this, and started to experiment with them, and that helped our minds and our brains expand, and that we had mushrooms a long time back. And what's kind of the history, at least you'd like to explain it, of the psychedelic side of mushrooms, and then let's bring it to modern day in terms of how we see these things being used.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, there's two kinds of history. There's what has been going on forever, and then there's when white people figure out about it, right? And so the Chinese have been using the adaptogenic mushrooms. One of the oldest living human specimens that was ever found was this guy called Otzi the Iceman. And it's found in a glacier 5,000, or it was like 5,000-year-old corpse. And because of where he died in the ice, his body, a lot of his body and the things that he were carrying were preserved. And he had a little satchel that contained adaptogenic mushrooms, and the scientists, the anthropologists, presumed that they were using them either for religious ceremonies and/or some sort of like antibiotic. But psychedelic mushrooms have been used in shamanic and religious ceremonies for millennia. South America, they use ayahuasca, which comes from a vine native to the area. And then I think the second part of the history of the introduction to the white population was Maria Sabina. She's famous shaman down in Mexico. And so the guy who first created LSD by accident was Albert Hoffman. And there was this Life magazine article, I think it's from 1957, where Hoffman and a couple other scientists went to visit Maria Sabina in her small village in Oaxaca, where she is administering psychedelic mushrooms to the locals there. And the Life magazine article kind of like really blew out this that she was doing this down there, and created a lot of attention for psychedelics. So in the 50s and 60s, before they were criminalized, there were thousands of articles written about psychedelics, particularly connected to therapy, psychological, psychiatric therapy. And then there were also hundreds of conferences that were going on at the time. So tons of minds, research, investment dollars were being put into understanding, what these could do for us. Unfortunately, some of that tech and research got co-opted by the CIA, and we're using LSD on soldiers in Vietnam, and then ultimately Nixon criminalized all of these psychedelics in the early 70s. He called them one of the biggest threats to the U.S. at the time. But I think it was, obviously so much of that was about the anti-war, anti-government, anti-capitalism that was part of the hippie movement, which really popularized these psychedelics. So, for me personally, I always am interested in finding better ways to connect with people. And I grew up, really fascinated by writing. I write now. I write for Rolling Stone about mushrooms, both psychedelic and functional. But some of the writers that really inspired me at an early age were from the beatnik generation, Jack Kerouac, William Ginsberg, or William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, and they had just like this counterculture idea that in large part sparked the whole hippie movement. And so drugs, I think, was just a tool for them, and psychedelics or cannabis, for Kerouac to experience and really understand jazz, and then translated that jazz music into his own writing style, which I really appreciated. But he also grew up Catholic, which I did as well, and he started to have a lot of interest in Eastern philosophy and religion, particularly like Zen Buddhism, and so I found that really fascinating as well. And so I think that the for me, it's not the recreation as much, although it can be a lot of fun, but the ability to connect deeper, really consider the philosophical questions that we all ponder about life and existence, and the meaning of everything. And so with any sort of supplements, the marketer will tell you, this pill can solve all your problems. I think, and there's something called the Palan effect going on right now with psychedelic mushrooms, and it was named after Michael Palan, who wrote this book, How to Change Your Mind. It's also a great book. It is a baby boomer guy who approached psychedelics from a complete skeptic's point of view, and by the end of the book, his perspective had completely changed. He pretty much tries every psychedelic there is known to man, and documents a ton of not only his own experiences but the people he met along the way. So while I think his book is with the best intentions and also really well covered, I don't think it's arguing for everybody go out and take psychedelics. But I think with us reading more headlines than the entire document or book, it's got the Palan effect has been coined because sometimes now, because of the popularity, people think, oh yeah, microdosing, you got depression, forget about it. You got anxiety, this is the cure. Well, while I think that it is like the most powerful tool for fast change, right? If we all put our minds to it and have the right support, the right environment, change is possible. Is my belief, anyways. But I think that psychedelic mushrooms just allow people to just have a little bit more awareness, and I think the more awareness that we have, that's really how we can start to change. We can't break a habit or a pattern without truly identifying it in ourselves first.
Hey, it's Dr. Ray. I want to quickly pause this episode to thank you so much for listening to this Fit Mother Project podcast. When I started the Fit Mother Project, I had no idea this podcast and this mission would become so impactful, so fun, and so amazing for so many ladies. And I just wanted to pause to give you some gratitude and thank you for being here. I mean it when I say that I'm so grateful to be in your life and to be helping you and your family live healthier and give you all this amazing information. So from my heart to yours, deepest thanks. For those interested, the types of psychedelic mushrooms that I know are very popular is psilocybin cubensis, which is like the one that people take, and I don't know how to describe what it looks like, but it kind of looks like a long skinny mushroom with a cap, and it has some blue stuff on it. That is I think the psilocybin that gets converted to psilocin, and then we get the hallucinogenic effects. What I think is really interesting and kind of funny is the other one is the red mushroom with the white caps. No one really takes it, but the Amanita muscaria, like the Super Mario mushroom, the one we've kind of had in all of our cultural memes for the longest time, happens to be a psychedelic mushroom that grows in cold climates like Siberia. And reindeer actually eat these recreationally, which I think is fascinating. And people actually drink the reindeer pee because it gets them high. So not that there's a point of sharing that, other than it's like, this stuff is crazy.
That's a fun
and deep.
factoid. Reindeer pee. Actually, I hadn't heard that one. I gotta
Yeah.
take some notes.
Amanita muscaria, reindeer pea. Some of the cultures up there like would follow the reindeer around.
Yeah, I mean the folklore is that maybe even the whole Santa Claus came
I've heard that
from
too.
the folklore from that area, and that's how we see flying reindeer. Uh, but yeah, Amanita muscaria is an interesting one. It does contain naturally a poisonous element to it known as ibotenic acid. There's three like main components to it. The muscimol and muscarine are what have the psychoactive effects. But the ibotenic acid can be poisonous when taken in too much dosage. So the real way to prepare amanita is to heat it to convert that ibotenic acid into muscimol. So that's just one thing, that I would warn. But yeah, the history behind it is really fascinating. There's some documentation that Vikings would eat a bunch of Amanita muscaria before, going and taking over a village and pillaging and so on. Um, and in my industry, there's kind of a couple of different channels for mushrooms, and the health stores carry the lion's mane, the cordyceps, the reishi products, but smoke shops have been looking for an alternative mushroom product as well, but they're always looking for something that has some sort of immediate, usually intoxicating effects. And so they've just in the past year have really gravitated towards these Amanita muscaria products. I get a little nervous about it. One, because of the ibotenic acid and making not knowing if they were prepared properly, and two, just because I think a lot of people rush into making products, for the dollars or the profit that can come from it, and just as a formulator myself and going to conferences and stuff and just asking some basic questions, I just wouldn't take 99% of the Amanita products out there personally.
And that's a great, I think, reminder for everyone is these mushrooms are no joke. Quality matters. They can have poisonous components. And let alone like if you were to venture into the realm of trying psychedelics, they can have very serious effects that like it'd be helpful to do that under guidance and professional supervision. Not necessarily you have to have professional supervision. I've, caveat, I've tried them before, certainly no professional supervision. They've helped me psychologically in many ways, but I am interested in seeing this whole new world where we're having a lot of people with PTSD issues, clinics popping up where people are doing assisted psychotherapy with psychedelics. Like what's happening in the legal front right now, at least in the United States, with in relation to that side of things.
Yeah, I've written about this a lot, and it's fascinating to watch. Cannabis legalization didn't have the same interest as from the pharmaceutical companies. There's a synthetic version of cannabis or THC called Marinol. That's been on the market for since the 70s or so, but it just really doesn't compare to cannabis. However, these psychological or these psychoactive psychedelic compounds found in mushrooms, like you say, psilocybin, psilocin, they're publicly traded companies right now are working on making synthesized versions of these that are slightly different for a couple of reasons. One, you can't patent nature. So if you synthesize psilocybin, you can do it, but you can't own it. So they're looking to change it just a little bit. And I think one way that the pharmaceuticals are maybe going to be more accepted by the government, and the research is interesting, and I don't know if it's possible, but what they're trying to do is find the brain enhancing properties in psilocybin, psilocin, and remove the psychedelic part of it.
Hmm.
So for people excited about the recreational part of it, that would kind of be taken away. But legally, to address your question more specifically, there's two states so far in the United States that have legalized mushrooms for medical or psychedelic assisted therapy, and that's Colorado and Oregon. And I just read an article yesterday about there's 3-4 month waiting list in Oregon for these therapies, which is great for these companies. But a very small percentage of them are from people from Oregon. So people are seeking out these treatments from all over different parts of the world, different parts of the country. The cost associated with it seems pretty high, and I think one key element to the full on incorporation of this, especially from the pharmaceutical point of view, is whether insurance would cover sessions like this. And so, yeah, for anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000, you have like a 5-6 hour guided session with a trained professional. The trained professional aspect is also another caveat and one for debate, right? So we talked about the ancient shamanic religious ceremonies that this has been used in, and still to this day there are people who learned either they're part of their lineage, or people go to Peru, study under these shamans and generations of shamans that have been administering this extremely powerful medicine to people. And now there's groups like MAPS, New Wave, that their business is training psychedelic therapists, and they predict that as this becomes more and more prevalent and popular, there's going to be a demand for hundreds of thousands of psychedelic therapists by the end of the decade. But the process for getting the license is usually anywhere from like a 6-week to a 6-month course, 10, 15, $25,000, whatever it is. And so there's a little debate, mostly between the people who've been practicing this for a long time. I'm sure there's plenty of therapists and people with their own experience that will get these licenses that have years, decades of psychotherapy, and I think that they would be the most qualified. But I'm nervous about the person who's leaving real estate, and they're just looking for a new career and a new license to have. So yeah, everything is not without complications and layers, especially when you're lifting the veil on this previously criminalized drug. But beyond that, there's a lot of cities that have decriminalized, and so that has opened the door. It's kind of the same path that cannabis followed, right? You had it illegal for years. It was first decriminalized for medical use in California in '96. Then we had the medical dispensaries, and then ultimately adult use. Full on recreational, use it responsibly, like alcohol, tobacco, and that's the direction we're moving with regulation. I assume that this will be the same direction with mushrooms, and as much as people feel like big pharma or big government really controls the way that things go down, I think for in large part the consumer really is who decides how things happen. And now that we're having a more of an open conversation about this, in this country and in the world, when someone tries a $4,000 therapy session and they find some benefit from it, they might want to continue microdosing. And if there was no copay on insurance and these things are prohibitively expensive, then it only allows the top 1% of earners to benefit from this. And we could all use some mental health improvements. And so I'm just always about safe access and access to everybody that wants to try it. And there's a lot of different ways that these people are offering it.
That's great rundown. And just, I mean, they are very accessible. Explain how accessible they are. And this is the big caveat. By no means suggesting anyone should do this, even take them or try them. But it's very simple for people to grow these things. I mean, they're literally like mushrooms on dung or cardboard, or explain that to people for context so they understand.
Yeah, you're right. And actually legally you can buy mushroom spores or liquid culture online because they don't yet contain psilocybin until you inoculate a grow substrate, usually oats, grain, soil, medium. And it's only when the mushroom and the mycelium start to form, and then later the mushroom, that these contain psilocybin. And unlike cannabis, where you need to really keep temperatures cool and have electricity running on lights, as long as you're keeping your temperatures below, I think, 74, 75 degrees, it is really pretty foolproof to grow mushrooms. You just have to have a sterile environment. And so, yeah, for $45, $50, you can buy the materials online to grow it yourself, and have an ounce or so of mushrooms. And then also beyond that, when you teach yourself how to make a spore print, like you can just with one mushroom make a spore print and continue to make liquid culture from that forever, as long as you store it correctly. So yeah, that's definitely a main interest for people, is because they are so easy to grow and scalable, that so many people are jumping into it.
Okay, I have one last question on the psychedelic side. Then I want to get back to talking about Microboost and some of the things that differentiate a very high quality functional mushroom product. That we hear the term microdosing thrown out a lot, and we mentioned it a couple times in this scenario. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does it look like to microdose? What are the purported benefits? And like, just dive into that a little bit, please.
Yeah, so by definition, a microdose is supposed to be sub-perceptual, meaning
Of a psychedelic mushroom, not just like I'm taking lion's mane microdose. I'm taking
right.
psychedelics
Right.
microdose. Okay.
Yeah. And so, if you take enough psilocybin psychedelic mushrooms, you start to have just noticeable distortions, or even improved mood. But a microdose, by definition, is supposed to be such a small amount that you're not noticing the physical effects, but it's still working on your brain in the background. Now, most people that are taking it don't really understand the whole sub-perceptual thing. So I think, just like most people take a microdose right around the threshold of perception. So you'll have like an elevated mood, maybe a little more cognizance or awareness of your thoughts and patterns. I know for me, it's about, I think part of the awareness that mushrooms have brought me is really teaching myself that while I can't control the actions of others, I can control my reactions to what life or other individuals throw at me. And so that has been a huge improvement in my life, that I don't feel controlled by someone frustrating or annoying or doing something uncouth towards me, right? And I'm not controlled by their actions, and I'm no longer controlled by my like unconscious reactions to it. So that's the big thing for me.
That's beautiful. I mean, a lesson that I feel like we'll all struggle with until we figure out. And it sounds like mushrooms are a tool that's helped you profoundly in that. So let's talk about your company, Microboost, MYCRO Boost, for people who are interested in learning more. And we're going to have website and stuff in the show notes. Give us a little pitch about why your particular products and the way you do things is a superior way for people to explore the world of functional non-psychedelic mushrooms.
Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, Microboost. We spell it with a Y because that's how you spell mycology. But I think I kind of have a backwards approach from a business perspective when it comes to supplement manufacturing. I think most businesses will work on, okay, this is what we can sell the product for. This is as cheap as we can possibly make the product for, and then we'll figure out the marketing and the budget for everything in between there. I kind of just first focus on making the highest quality product possible, and then working backwards from there to try and figure out how we can scale it efficiently and make it profitable as well. We also we have, if we're going to keep giving these people these products, we need to stay in business. But that's always the beginning of how I do something. And then I'll buy like the top 10 best selling products from different mushroom companies, and really try and understand what's out in the market. So quickly, I know this is another kind of caveat, but one of the biggest things to look for when you're buying a functional mushroom product, whether Microboost or anybody else, is whether they're made from fruiting bodies or what is called myceliated oats. So when you grow mushrooms commercially, you inoculate a grow substrate, usually a starchy substrate like oats, rice, grains, and from there the mycelium form in the grain, and then the fruiting body is the stem and the cap, or what protrudes from the earth. So mycelium is fascinating, and the biggest living organism on Earth. There's places in Oregon that have like 2-3 square mile mycelium living organisms, and they contribute a tremendous amount to our ecology. But in specifically adaptogenic mushroom supplements, the beneficial compounds are found much more prevalently in the fruiting body. And so when we make a product, we not only use the fruiting body, but a concentrated extraction of that. So we can put a significant amount or a therapeutic amount of mushrooms into small form factors like a cup of coffee, a gummy, or a vegan soft gel. And myceliated oats, like if you just think about the volume of it, right? You have this 8 pound block, and mycelium grows through it. It might and make that 8 pound block now 8.4 pounds. And so what myceliated oats companies do is they'll harvest the fruiting body, use that for some other more high end product, and then pulverize the entire mycelial block and then market that as the mushroom product. And so, as you might imagine, there's a tremendous difference between the beneficial compounds in a concentrated version of that stem and cap versus something that it contains 90-95% filler. The mycelium has beneficial compounds in it as well, but you're basically paying for super high end dirt when when you paid top dollar for mushrooms. And this is not lost on mushroom companies. There's now a petition to the FDA right now for truth in labeling with mushroom products, and their ask is that if you're going to label your product mushrooms, have mushroom imagery on the packaging, that you should be using fruiting bodies, right? We don't sell the roots of apple trees in a grocery store and try and convince people that that's apples, or even worse, a bag full of dirt that apple tree was grown in, and trying to pass that as a delicious Fuji.
I mean, that's a big distinction, and it sounds like the pressure is going to keep continuing to shape up. Like, it's so interesting that we have this psychedelic landscape that's shaping up. We even have the functional food landscape that's shaping up, and it's an exciting time to be in the mushroom business, my friend, especially with how beneficial these are. And I'm excited that people now know about Microboost and MYCRO Boost, and you can check out those products. And they come in those great soft gels too, which is a nicer formulation than people just having regular encapsulated. So, I mean, you guys are definitely premium quality in the space. So, I would say if people are going to give it a good shakeout to try functional mushrooms, it would be a good idea, particularly if you're going for like the cognitive aspect of these things, like a lion's mane. Like you have that lion's mane cordyceps combo, which would be a really good starter product for people who want to feel like a boost. Is that one of the ones you might recommend for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I start my day with that lion's mane cordyceps product. It's called our brain supplement, and then a cup of Microboost coffee, which actually tastes really good too. So that's another key difference, right? Not only do we want to have a great medical benefit to it, but I want it to taste great, because if it tastes terrible, you're not going to replace your coffee habit with mushrooms. I think, unless you really like choking down stuff that taste healthy. But yeah, our coffee has 3,000 milligrams of these functional mushrooms, all 5 of the ones that we work
Wow.
with per cup, and it tastes more like hot chocolate than mushrooms or dirt.
And is it coffee beans in there as well? Like it is a coffee, or it's
There is a small amount of coffee in there, so there's 55 milligrams of caffeine per serving, which is the equivalent of about a third of a cup of coffee, or like a Earl
cool.
Grey tea.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool option for people to incorporate that into a daily routine. I like that a lot.
Awesome.
All right, well, Robert, this was cool. I appreciate the landscape that we got to traverse here. People have definitely learned a lot about mushrooms. Give people a couple like resources. Not that they have your website and there's a lot of great blogs on there, but you mentioned a couple things in recap if people want to explore this more. You mentioned Fantastic Fungi was one. Michael Pollan's book, which what is that called
It's
again?
called
Change
How to
Mind.
Change Your
Change.
Mind.
Is there anything else you direct people if they want to kind of start to explore this realm of mushrooms and educate themselves?
Yeah, I've got 8 articles on rollingstone.com
Okay.
about mushrooms. If you search Robert Johnson, psychedelics, Rolling Stone, you'll find all of those. And most recently, my 9th article, I have a 2-part series that's just about mushroom vocabulary. And there's a lot of in there about functionals that we talked about now. And I'm going to have a white paper on the site pretty soon, too, that is just a guide to reading your functional mushroom label. Because again, I know there's a lot of different options out there for people to choose from. If they like ours, I encourage them to try it and use it all the time. But there's a lot of other great products out there. I just want people to be able to know which ones are best.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Robert. I appreciate it. I know our community does too.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Have a great day. Thank you.